It ain't the left side or the right side, then it must be the FinSide. It ain't the left side.
Thank you, Solo D. Welcome to another episode of On the FinSide here with Kat and Paul. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. I'm Brian Cat NFL. Paul is Fanatic _. The NFL Draft Combine is over at the time we're recording this show. The pro days are going to start here this upcoming week. The NFL Draft pre-process continues to tick along. We're breaking down the running back position for the Miami Dolphins here heading into early March. And before we even get into that, I mean, free agency is going to take shape first. And there are two big names out there at running back. Not to say the Dolphins are going to get them, but two names that might hit the market, one more likely than the other. The first one is Derrick Henry, and the second one is Melvin Gordon. Now, Derrick Henry, Paul, said that the lowest amount in an interview, he said, and the lowest amount he would take is the same contract Zeke Elliott got, which is 6 years, $90 million, $50 million guaranteed. Man, that's a lot of money for a running back.
Yeah, I think Zeke got overpaid, and I love Derrick Henry. I want Derrick Henry. If he goes out there seeking that contract, there's two factors to this, and I don't want to go down a rabbit hole on it. I know we'll probably talk at length about it if it comes to fruition, but I'd urge our listeners to go out and look at the way that the CBA structure matches up as well. It makes it a little more difficult to put together a creative contract at this point. So it's going to be hard for some teams to go out and get Derrick Henry. We'll just say some for now. In the current environment with the CBA not agreed to as of yet. In addition to that, while I love Derrick Henry, he's not a guy that's going to catch a ball out of the backfield. And that being the case, that's going to reduce his value no matter how good he is as a running back. So you look at that. If it were me and he goes out, feels out in free agency and gets laughed at, then by all means, I'd be willing to go in that $10 to $12 million range, but that's about where I tap out, or probably over 4 years, maybe 5.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, when it comes to Henry, if he's really asking for $15 million a year, I agree with you. I don't think he'd get it. But to me, he's also a player that, A, like you said, is not a good fit in Chan Gailey's offense because he's not a receiving guy. But the rest of his game is so dominant that you may have to at least take a look. But also, too, in Tennessee, I think you also have to structure the running game in a way that has Derrick Henry constantly running downfield, trucking people. And I'm not sure if Chan Gailey and the Dolphins are going to want to build that type of offense. So overall, I would say pass. But if you get down to 10, 12 million a year because he's a running back, I would certainly take a look with all the money that the Dolphins have. The second guy, Paul, is Melvin Gordon. And he's somebody that held out for a lot of money last year. The Chargers offered him $10 million a year. He turned it down. He came back in the middle of the year and played pretty so-so the rest of the year. And I'd argue strongly Austin Eckler for the Chargers was a better, more versatile threat than he was.
I'd agree strongly that Austin Eckler was a stronger, more versatile threat than he was. And if he's laughing them off at $10 million a year, I'm sorry. I can't go beyond 10 to 12 million a year for a running back. And that's a superstar running back, unless it is vintage Barry Sanders or vintage Christian Okoye, not Melvin Gordon, who is coming off a meh type year after holding out and all kinds of other crap. No, that's just no.
Yeah. 4 of his 5 seasons in the pros, he's averaged under 4 yards a carry. It's not to say it's all his fault, but when you look at the player, I mean, I see kind of just an average guy. I mean, and he'll be 27 years old this year. That may not seem very old, but this is a very young man's position. And when you look at the top 4 or 5 running backs that are going to be in this NFL draft, they're going to be 21 by opening week, 6 years younger than Melvin Gordon, and a lot of them with a lot fewer hits on their body. So the other part, the attractive thing could be if Melvin Gordon is available for, let's say, $8 million a year, I might think about that, and I could see that being somewhat of an attractive option because A, you're getting a quality back for a couple of years at least. And number two, you could conceivably go into the draft with 14 picks, not needing to take anybody at running back, wide receiver, or tight end in any round.
See, I've got news for you. With 14 draft picks, I would still take a running back, and I would still take a tight end, given what I'm looking at with the roster today. It may not be somebody you expect to start for you right away, but somebody that can be a contributor.
Possibly, with 14 picks, you're going to spread those out quite a bit, and you probably end up taking one of those positions in that scenario, but you don't have to if you have Gordon and your skill positions are largely taken care of. So we're setting the framework here heading into the draft. And Paul, the way I look at, obviously they have a huge need at running back. I mean, frankly, they don't have a running back on the roster. You've got Kalen Ballage, Patrick Laird, Myles Gaskin. Ballage, I hope, is not on the team. Laird is a decent third down back in the Danny Woodhead role. Myles Gaskin showed a little bit toward the end of the year, but overall, they're going to need one, probably two running backs in free agency in the draft. When I look at this draft board, I see 5, maybe 6 players who I would comfortably take in the second round. I wouldn't spend a first round pick on any of these guys. My number one guy is J.K. Dobbins, and we'll dig a little bit deeper into these guys. But 1, J.K. Dobbins, 2, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 3, DeAndre Swift, 4, Cam Akers from Florida State, and 5, somebody who just ran a blazing 40 time for his size at 226, and that's Jonathan Taylor. I also like Zach Moss from Utah as maybe kind of a third round pick type of option. But then I see a massive drop off, Grand Canyon size drop off, where after those top 6 guys, I don't know if I would take a running back until the 5th round.
I think there's a few guys that would fit in, and I'm going to approach this a little differently than you do. And you know, for our listeners out there, I know there's a lot of you that are ridiculously into DeAndre Swift. I've got news for you. You can't fill all the roles on the team in the first and second round. You just cannot. Miami's got 14 picks. They've got 5 picks in the first 2 rounds. Miami has needs, and I know running back's a need, but that running back needs an offensive line to run behind. And Miami, through both free agency and the draft, has the opportunity to build the line. By all accounts, as we know, they need a quarterback. And if they don't get one in round 1, and which they may or may not have to trade up for, again, that's one of the positions filled. They have a deathly need at left tackle. Otherwise, you might as well not even bother taking a quarterback because you're going to get that man killed trotting out the garbage that we did last year. So really, it's the running back position. You can stream options there for you fantasy folks. You can stream options if you get the right combination. And I go back to when Davin Godchow and Vincent Taylor got drafted by the Dolphins. I know there were a couple of guys at the very top end of the draft that were amazing players and guys that everybody wanted. For me that year, I was looking at the 5th, 6th, 7th rounders and saying that there were guys that so long as you plug them in the right role or the right scheme, were going to be completely effective contributors at the NFL level. And that's what you can get at the running back position in the later rounds. You want a guy that can smash through people and run around them as well. A.J. Dillon out of BC is probably going to be there in the 6th round. You want somebody special that has the ability to run over people, and will probably be there in the 5th round. Keyshawn Vaughn out of Vandy. You know, you want somebody that may be underrated because he had terrible offensive line play and had to do it all himself. At Florida, you got LaMichael Perrine, who's already got a cousin on the team. You know, there are those players that fit properly into schemes that you can get in those later rounds, and then you can use those early picks on quarterback, left tackle, possibly center, you know, pass rusher, the positions that are a little bit harder to fill later on with effective players immediately out of the gate.
Yeah, I definitely take the opposite approach on it because I like these top five guys I've got at running back. J.K. Dobbins is my top choice. When I just scratched together my overall Dolphins board at this time, as the combine was going on, I had J.K. Dobbins 28th overall on my Dolphins board. This is a plug and play starter, great vision and balance, three straight 1,000-yard years, had over 2,000 this past year, and one of the best pass protection running backs in this class. I think you put him in immediately, and you're gonna possibly have a 12, 1,300-yard back. Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of LSU. He was the team MVP at LSU, not Joe Burrow, believe it or not. Yeah, he's 5'7", but he uses that frame to his advantage. I mean, the comparisons to other type of muscle hamsters like Ray Rice, Doug Martin, MJD, Devontae Freeman, I think those all hold up. And on screen passes, good luck trying to tackle him in the open field with that low center of gravity. DeAndre Swift is third on my list. He's number one on a lot of people's. I think he's a chiseled guy, but I don't see anything special in any context with him. Um, 5'8", 212 pounds. Georgia had a great offensive line blocking for him, so very good player. Cam Akers, um, there at 20 years old, he got hit in the backfield, according to PFF, more times than any running back in college football. So quite astounding. It's a miracle that he had over 1,100 rushing yards for the Seminoles, 5 yards a carry, 18 touchdowns this past year. And at 20 years old, he doesn't have a lot of tread on his tires either. And with Jonathan Taylor out of Wisconsin, I mean, the production speaks for itself. His last 3 years, rushing yards, it looks like a glitch, but it's not. 1,977 in 2017, 2,194 in 2018, and 2,003 in this past year. Sixth all time in rushing yards, and he missed a year. If he would have needed less than 1,000 yards to be the all time leading rusher had he had a fourth year. And I think I might look back and think that I overthought this guy a little bit. He just ran a 4.39 at 226 pounds and is arguably the most productive running back over a span of 3 years. But there are some problems with him. He has 18 fumbles in his college career. That's a lot. He's a non-factor in the passing game, both as a blocker and a receiver. But man, when he's got the ball, he can take it from point A to point B. And then Zach Moss from Utah, you look at him and take one look at him on film and tell me that you don't see Kareem Hunt, who led the NFL in rushing in 2018. So I see a strong top six guys. I would prefer to take one of these guys at 56, where the Dolphins have their fifth pick in the second round. But some of these guys, I'm not sure if they're going to get down to that spot. So I can say right now, I would comfortably take Dobbins, Edwards, Helaire, and Swift at 39. I think that would be a solid pick. And then Jonathan Taylor, Cam Akers, or Zach Moss at 56. But Paul, I know that you want to wait a little bit longer to possibly get that running back.
I do. I mean, if one of those guys fell to the 56th pick, I could understand it at that point. I really want to fill quarterback, pass rusher, and two offensive line slots in those first four picks the way it stands today. So it would be a struggle for me to say go running back unless the board fell completely different than anybody on the planet's expecting. That being the case, it's Zach Moss. Ooh, I do like him. I really like him. Preferably, I wouldn't mind Miami sliding back a little in the third and then grabbing him if he fell. But I'd say with that third round pick for him. Once you get beyond Zach Moss, it's very intriguing to me. And the guy I'm highest on, I know some of our listeners really like that we brought him up already. And I'm going to dive into him first, even though he's probably projected as a six. I'd easily take him in the fifth. I think he's somebody that could have a sneaky good career in the NFL, and that's A.J. Dillon. He's a guy that you can even slide to fullback a little bit, possibly. That's some of the speculation out there. For his career at BC, and that's despite playing through an injury his sophomore year, he played 3 years there. He's got 4,382 yards, 5.2 yards per carry, 38 touchdowns. He's finishing by leaving early 220 yards short of the ACC career rushing record. He also added 21 receptions for 236 yards and 2 touchdowns there too. I mean, so he's got 40 touchdowns in his 3 years, including an injury-prone sophomore year. And then, I mean, hell, you go back to his senior year of high school where he only played in 4 games. He had 635 yards and 12 touchdowns. It's A.J. Dillon at 245 pounds ran, I believe it was a 4.53 40.
Yep.
And he's shown the elusiveness to get around you. He's very athletic for his size. And we've seen what Derrick Henry, what a punishing back can do. And this is a guy that can also catch a few balls out of the backfield. So he's one I'm really high on. I would grab him easily in the 5th, maybe even the 4th if you filled enough needs thus far. I don't give a damn where other people have him ranked. It's one of those scenarios where go out and get your guy if he's there. Outside of him, another guy I'd look at in the 4th round would be Keyshawn Vaughn from Vandy. He's a guy I really like. He's a tiny little pocket Hercules, basically, that can go over around you as well. He had over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns for Vandy his senior year, and he caught almost 300 yards out of the backfield on 30 balls. Josh Kelly out of UCLA, he's a guy that we saw a lot of in the Senior Bowl. I'd easily take him in the 5th, as well as LaMichael Perine, who I think is very underrated and is starting to turn some heads, given the fact that Florida didn't have a lot on the offensive side of the ball, and he still made things happen, as I alluded to earlier. Plus, he added 40 receptions for 260 yards and 5 touchdowns. So, I mean, he can do all the Chan Gailey-like things. Liked what I saw out of him after the season ended. And then you got Darius Anderson out of TCU, pass-heavy offense, still managed to average 5.4 yards per carry for 823 yards and 6 touchdowns and 22 receptions and 128 yards. There's a lot of decent options late in the game, and that's not even counting guys like Anthony McFarland.
Yeah, there are some there when you get down to the Dolphins are expected to have. I wish they'd release the compensatory picks. Now, okay, they probably will by the time we release the show, but Dolphins are expected to have 2 to 4 picks in the 5th round. They already have 2. They may get a 3rd depending on if they get the comp pick for Cam Wake. And they're expected to also get that 5th round pick back that they traded to Arizona for Kenyon Drake. But yeah, and that's where I see kind of that sweet spot at running back, even if you draft one early or sign one in free agency. And A.J. Dillon, you said 6th round that you take or excuse me, you projected 6th round and you take him in the 4th or 5th round. I don't even know if he's going to get to the 4th or 5th round after what he did at the combine. Because he ran a 4.53 with a 41-inch vertical at 6 foot 247 pounds. And if you're one of these, I don't care about workout numbers types of people, I understand, but those numbers certainly pop. My thing with A.J. Dillon is that I'm not saying he's a clone of Kalen Ballage, but they both, to me, kind of do the same things where they don't have really any factor in the passing game. They're so big that it makes it hard for them to turn on a dime the way that you need to at the NFL level. So A.J. Dillon, I'd be fine with in 5th or 6th round, but I do like other running backs ahead of him, even after the top 6 guys that I had mentioned. So I'd say if I had to pick a 7th guy on that list, it's somebody that a lot of people aren't too familiar with. That's Patrick Taylor out of Memphis. Somebody at 6'2", 220 pounds. This is a guy that Tony Pauline talked a lot about, and I had a chance to watch him. I think like David Johnson and like Alexander Madison, he's going to be moving up draft boards, and then you're going to see him taken in the 3rd or 4th round and think, who the heck is that guy? But then you watch him on tape, and it's like, wow, he does look like he has the makeup of an NFL running back. He's got that big frame. He also could have some versatility in the passing game. Anthony McFarland would be next for me out of Maryland. Reminds me a little of Devontae Freeman. Undersized, but has some stockiness to him, has some explosiveness. And in 2018, he actually had a game where he had 298 yards against Ohio State. So not a lot of people can say that. Josh Kelly is a name you mentioned, Paul, and one I actually had mocked to the Dolphins in the 5th round of a previous one we did. Nothing really jumps out for him, but he's a solid all around back. And I saw a lot more burst at the Senior Bowl that I thought that he may have had. So a decent player there. And also, finally, the other one I would take uh, anywhere in the top 5 rounds. My final guy is DJ Dallas out of Miami. He switched from wide receiver to running back, so he understands the passing game. He's still learning to really be that running back, but I've saw a couple of very, very good runs out of him where he's got kind of that build up speed that a wide receiver has and a stocky running back has. And also Daniel Jeremiah Daniel Jeremiah also said that this is probably the best pass protection running back in the draft. And Chan Gailey is going to like somebody who can get out of the backfield and catch some passes because he's a former wide receiver, as well as block too. So that would kind of round out my list there, Paul.
I'd flirt with the idea, and I need to see more of him of J.J. Taylor out of Arizona. I mean, he's very tiny. He doesn't have the build to be an every down back in the NFL, but there have been some folks comparing him to Tariq Cohen of the Bears. So he's definitely worth taking a look at. I'm not sure if you mentioned Eno Benjamin. He's another guy that seems to have slid a little for a lot of folks, but he's done some special things throughout his college career. And then did you mention Cam Akers? I apologize. I thought you may have, but again, we've named so many running backs at this point.
Yeah, I did. In fact, while we're recording the show, we had a little disconnection issue, and that was the name of the player. I talked about Cam Akers when we disconnected momentarily, but yeah, he's somebody that on my overall Dolphins board, I've got him I've got him ahead of Jonathan Taylor by 2 spots. I've got him 35th overall on my Dolphins board, so I'm very, very high on him, especially with the big needs the Dolphins have at running back.
So, Kat, I'm going to ask you about another guy because I know you're a big Mizzou fan. What's the story with Larry Roundtree? I've heard some very positive and some very negative, and you've probably got the most eyes on him of anybody, so I'll let you kind of talk, but I'm just curious. Is there anything there?
I didn't see anything special out of him. I mean, I think he's the typical running back who takes what's blocked up. So if you get a good offensive line in front of him, then I think he could be a good player. But I think you could say that about a lot of running backs too. So overall, maybe a late round type of player, but that's about it for me.
Now, one guy I'd be intrigued to see a little more of was Antonio Gibson from Memphis. He's a guy, he didn't really get a lot of running opportunities in 2019, but he's looked good when I've had the opportunity to see him. He averaged 11 yards per carry, and he added 38 passes for 735 yards with 8 touchdowns. I mean, that's somebody that, for a Chan Gailey type offense, could actually sneak into a very productive role, and you may be able to grab him later, even undrafted.
Yeah, 6 foot, 224 pounds. I see him going somewhere on day 3. He's been one of those players that throughout the draft process, people aren't really sure if you're going to have him at running back or wide receiver. He certainly has flaws and strengths at both spots, but yeah, somebody, again, he would be a perfect type of guy with one of those 5th round picks that the Dolphins have.
I'm with you. He's definitely one that I'm a little intrigued by as one of those late round guys. I do want to see, and this is something that I don't know if you and I fully agree on, but especially if Miami doesn't get a Melvin Gordon or a Derrick Henry or a running back in free agency, I want to see them double down on the running back position in the draft. If they grab somebody in the 2nd round, I still want one of these guys in the 5th or 6th round. If they grab somebody in the 4th round, I still want somebody in the 5th or 6th round. I want them to double down here just like I did with tight end a few years ago. So
yeah, I could see that. And when we did our mocks, we both had them doubling down. I took Cam Akers in the 3rd and Josh Kelly in the 5th, and I know you took 2 running backs. One was A.J. Dillon, and the other is escaping my memory right now. But
I think I took Keyshawn Vaughn.
Yeah, you did. That was Keyshawn Vaughn. I think you took them both in the 5th round, if I'm not mistaken. And yeah, I mean that would certainly be interesting. but when I look at these top 5 guys, I see a real potential for a bell cow because running back has become a one contract type of position where if you can get them for 4 years and you can put them in there and hammer them away, that I think you're going to be able to justify that pick very, very easily. Mike Renner from PFF had the perfect thing to say about running backs. Said that running back for a GM is kind of a pat you on the back pick because you draft a running back in the first or second round, he gets 250 carries. He gets 250 carries, he finishes with 1,000 or more yards. And if he finishes with 1,000 yards, he's a good running back. And if he's a good running back, he's a good pick. And that's the perfect way to describe that on there because they're immediately going to be a focal point in the offense there. So I'm with you in that. I would like to, at the end of the day, wait to that 56 pick to get one of these guys. But if we're there at 39 and you've already got a couple of running backs off the board, I think watching the draft, that's at the point I'm going to say, you know what? Now is the time to take a Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 39.
See, for me, if there's a run on running backs early, I'm still comfortable with what's late. And if there is that run on running backs at the end of the first, beginning of the second, before Miami picks, that means somebody slides to the Dolphins because we already know that there's going to be a run on quarterbacks in round one. And if you add a run on running backs there as well, that's 7 to 10 guys that are probably going above where they're at on most draft boards. And with that being the case, that just means somebody ridiculously talented that should have been a first-round pick that may not be a running back or a quarterback is probably going to slide a little bit further back within striking distance for Miami.
Yeah, and they also could, too, from the 56 pick, end up trading up a little bit to get, 5 picks in the top 45, and with that last one being at running back. So the Dolphins do have the flexibility and the leverage to do that. And typically I'm arguing the same points you are, Paul, that I have so little respect for the running back position. I think if you have the offensive line blocking properly and you have the talent up there that you can basically put anybody at running back. But I find myself talking a little bit differently this year because I like these top 6 guys so much, and I'd be willing to spend a second-round pick on 6 of them. Other players, too, to round things out. Guys I didn't, I'm not big on drafting, period. Eno Benjamin from Arizona State, like you mentioned, very productive in college. I just don't see a lot of special traits. Same goes for me with LaMichael Pirine. J.J. Taylor from Arizona, yeah, he's stocky, he's short, and he had a 1,400-yard season with Arizona in 2018, but I don't see a lot of special traits out of him either. Salvin Ahmed is somebody that I was hoping was going to blaze a quick 40 time. Instead, he runs a 4.62, and so that completely takes him off my board. So, yeah, we'll see here because the Dolphins are going to end up drafting 1 or 2 of these guys, and in free agency, that takes form first. So we'll see if they get into the Melvin Gordon or an outside chance at the Derrick Henry sweepstakes if he hits free agency. And that will do it for our breakdown of the running back position here on the FinSide. You're listening to Cat and Paul. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Spreaker, iTunes, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. I'm Brian Cat NFL. Paul is Fanatic_Pick. And if it's not on the right side and it's not on the left side, it is on the FinSide. Solo D, take us home.
It ain't the left side or the right side, then it must be the FinSide. It ain't the left side or the right side, then it must be the FinSide. Listen, Dolphins fans across the land all tuning in to see what